that if you work more people, you generally have more malt, so you kind of get a double word score there. But in a contest like the Worldwide, if your goal is improving your score, you want to work people, as many people as you can, and then take the multipliers that you can get. Don't get hung up anywhere. If there's a big pileup, go do something else and come back later. Completely different mentality than what you see in the sweepstakes. And here's the proof of that. If I can go work 4 more people in 4 minutes, why am I going to spend any time waiting for this rare multiplier to do something, especially if I can keep track of them and come back later? So it turns out your logging software tries to help you with this. Not all the softwares make it super clear what's going on. That's the reason I spent time on this. But in the end, the quick formula is the value of a multiplier is QSOs divided by mults. That will give you the QSOs per multiplier, approximately. So that will tell, just doing that simple calculation will tell you, okay, how many contacts do I need to make up for a multiplier? And then what the logging software does is apply a time value. It goes, what's my rate? Mix it in with this mult value, and those two things together is how the software tells you that a multiplier is worth 4.6 minutes or whatever the software, however it indicates that. So that's what it's trying to tell you, and that's and the reason it's telling you that is so that you can make these trade-off decisions without having to do a lot of math in your head. Now your software is doing all of this based on your current score. And remember, I said you want to evaluate things based on your final score. And the reason for that is there are times in the contest where you might have a very narrow window of opportunity to work a lot of multipliers or something like that, and you will have to make trade-offs that are counter to this. Like if you know there's a particular gray line opening, and if I go there, I can probably get 10 multipliers, even though it's going to be slow and I'm going to have to spend time calling in pileups. That may be a good decision overall for your score because you can't get those multipliers anywhere else. But this is where your level of effort becomes important. If you're just messing around, maybe the calculation might be different. But if you're one of the serious competitors, you know, I need those 10 multipliers, and I can make up some of the contacts that I would give up to go get them later on or some other way. And this is why you do log analysis. So the idea here is, let's go look at your own past logs. Let's look at the logs of others and see what's going on. Because what we will find over and over again in almost every contest, for a given location or a certain part of the country, the activity patterns repeat. You will see things like, oh, there's big rates, and then there'll be a period where they go down, then they'll go up, and then they'll go down, they'll go up. So you see this in sweepstakes, you see this in VHF contests, you see this in DX contests. And why is that? It's because generally for a given geography, the demographics and the time of day and the sun and the bands that are open don't change that much. If you live in the east coast of the United States, you know that when the sun comes up, the band's going to open to Europe, and then you're going to go up the MUF, and there's going to be lots of guys to work, and then it's going to come back down, and then you're going to end up on the low bands at night. So now the trick is, how do you take advantage of that knowledge so that you change bands at the right time or you be in the right place at the right time, that kind of thing. But you will see activity patterns repeat. And the second part of this is we go through the sunspot cycle. What's been interesting to me was the pattern will not change. What will change is what band it happens on. So, for example, in high sunspots, you'll see everybody goes to the high bands and the high rates are up on 10 meters or something like that. But if you look at the same contest from the same station at the low sunspot years, have almost the same rates or certainly the same curve, but it'll be on 20 meters with maybe 15 as part of it. So, again, it goes back to demographics and just how the world turns and where the sun is every day that helps define some of this. So looking back in time can really give you clues as to what to expect in the contest. There are lots of tools to do this. I'm not going to name any, but EI6DX, for example, takes in all the logs from some of the contests and does all kinds of statistical models. This output down here is from a program called SH5, which is a program that will consume your Cabrillo log and then give you all kinds of stats and reports and printouts and so on. It's a really great program for just doing a quick snapshot of a log and then being able to kind of tease out some of the different interesting facts about it. And I think this is another chart from from SH5, just what the breakdowns are and stuff. If you're just casual in the contest, some of this stuff may not make that much difference. But Dave McCarty, who spoke first this morning, he and I, when we first met when we were in high school, and we would spend hours after a contest like sweepstakes comparing notes, almost like 15-minute period by 15-minute period. What were you doing? What band were you on? How many contacts did you make? Who did you work? You know, and just going through what we did before and learning from each other formed a lot of our things that today we don't even think about. You just go do the contest and you just know there are these things that are true because we already did our homework a long time ago and learned some of these things. So that's this, and by the way, this kind of knowledge through learning and analysis and so on is why the top single op guys always seem to know what band to be on and when to change bands and that kind of stuff. It's because they've thought about it in advance and they have certain keys they're looking for that say, oh, if I see this kind of thing happen, I need to do something. So for me, for example, if I'm on 15 meters working guys in the morning and I am listening on the second radio on 10, it's just, and then you'll hear all kinds of Italians and they'll be real loud. I don't go to 10 meters until I hear really loud German stations because by then I know the band is now open far enough that there's actually, I'm going to be accessing a bigger group of people. Where I hear a lot of my competitors the Italians will show up, they're real loud, they're all down there up on 10 meters calling the CQ, and I'm still on 15 running guys twice as fast. And it's just because, okay, I have this thing I'm looking for. Once it happens, then I know it's time to go. Yes? Name of the software, it's SH5, Sierra Hotel 5. It's done by a Russian guy, I think UA4WLI or something like that. Anyway, you can search for it on Google and you'll find it. Oh, yeah, this is one I added. Sorry. I needed something with a picture in it, you know? All right, so in the end, you've done this analysis. You kind of have an idea what's going on. You know where score comes from. Now you put those two things together and you make a plan. Where do I need to be when? And the only thing to remember, I think K0DQ wrote this in an article here recently, but it's certainly anybody in the military understands this. You know, nothing ruins a plan more than actual engagement. So the key thing about the plan is it's the plan. It's not the you know, it's not the recipe. It's just the plan. So by learning things and knowing what's happening, if all the things happen the way you expect, great. If they don't happen the way that you expect, you've got some basis to make these decisions about what I should do and where I should be. Okay, so we have a station, we have a plan. Now, it's all about execution, right? And so for execution, it's about efficiency. The whole goal is I got to put people in the log as fast as I can, as cleanly as I can, for as long as I can. And so let's talk about that. Contest QSOs have a very definite pattern. By definition in the rules, you know you're going to do call signs, you're going to do exchange, you're going to do the next one over and over and over again. It's very repetitive. So once you understand this flow, you don't have to think about it so much anymore. If you've ever listened to the air traffic controllers, and the first time you listen to them, it's like they're just mumbling stuff back and forth. Like, what the heck are they talking about? But after you've listened to them for a while, or if you're, you know, have experience of being a pilot or something, you don't care that they're mumbling because you know what it is they're going to say next. You just are listening for, okay, did I hear the thing that the guy meant? Like, what frequency am I going to? Or, you know, okay, the readback was he didn't miss anything. Move on. Same thing is true in contesting. Know the rhythm, know the sequence, have it baked in so you're not having to think about it. Less thinking is less energy. The less you think, the better you'll do. That's true in golf too, by the way, I think. Okay, so another good example of this is when you drive a car. When you first drive a car, when you first learn how to drive, you got both hands on the wheel. It's amazing all the stuff you have to process. I've got to look in the rearview mirror and then look in the side view mirror and look in the rearview mirror. Oh, yeah, I got to look at the instruments. Oh, yeah, I have to look at the road. Where are the lines, you know, and so on. It's just, it's a lot. And then after a while, you know, a few years later, you're driving to work, you're on the cell phone, you got the radio going, you're eating from, you know, something from the fast food place as you're going. And I didn't say this was good, by the way, it just says what it is. But the idea here is, that's well, no drinking while driving. We'll draw the line there. But you're not having to process the point here is everybody understands you're not having to process the driving part anymore. Your brain is kind of doing that in the background. And really in contesting the same thing is true. You know you're progressing to this when the effort of making the QSO starts to kind of go down and you have extra time. You realize, oh, I only have to listen for the 5 seconds the guy says is exchange, which means I've got 15 more seconds where I can watch TV or think about the weather or whatever. And that's how you know you've really got things down, is when you start thinking about other things while you're operating. And then, despite what I said before, it's a really good idea to learn how to type these days. Modern radio contesting really requires you to get things from your ears to the keyboard. Doesn't matter how you do that, as long as you do it reliably. So I can't type without looking at the keys, but I have years of typing in 6 to 8 character groups of things. And I've learned that I can type in call signs really accurately, which is one of the reasons I have pretty low error rates. It's not because I'm necessarily that great at copying things, but I don't introduce a lot of typos. And in checking logs, I see some people actually, you can tell they got probably who they worked, they just couldn't type the call in correctly. So there's 2 ways you can combat that. One of them is practice, just do it more. The other one is, as you learn and you're not having to spend so much time thinking about making the QSO, spend a little bit of your brain power to read the contact you just logged and make sure that it's okay. There are many times in a contest where I'll look up at the line above it and go, oh yeah, I typed that guy's call in, or I was dyslexic on it or something like that. And you can just go up and fix it. And so you can kind of do your own log checking as you're going along, and then when you're done, you just send the log in. So let's talk about phone and CW. Phone is really difficult. It is a very physical thing to talk for a whole weekend. And it wears you out. It really does. It's you're breathing and talking the whole time. And so learning where to take a breath and just getting, again, it goes back to rhythm and pattern. Sweepstakes exchange, Whiskey Alpha 3, Victor Whiskey Japan, your number 147 Bravo, K5ZD, 73, Western Massachusetts. Now I said that the whole way through, very even, spaces, didn't breathe again. And that's the deal. You have to just get to the point that okay, for this exchange, that's the longest one, probably the worst case that we have. But I've got to have a certain amount of air and I've got to have a certain amount of pace to make it all the way through. It just comes from practice. A little bit easier with, like in the worldwide where it's just 5905 or whatever. But anyway, practice that kind of stuff. Again, it's about energy. Just want to make things as smooth as possible. From an efficiency standpoint, everything that doesn't go into making the exchange is superfluous. It's extra. It's unnecessary. So when the guy is done with his exchange, or as you're giving your exchange, you don't really need to put in any extra words. Just, it's 5905. That's all we need. We don't need thanks, good to see you again, 5905, how's it going down there, that kind of stuff. Now, your friends, obviously, you may want to do that, and that's okay. I'm not saying that you have to be a robot at all this, but all that extra words and stuff add up over the course of the weekend. It's all about time. If you spent 30 minutes a weekend telling people, please copy, or Roger the 5914, that's 30 minutes you couldn't spend working somebody else. Please say your call every once in a while if you're running people. I love the guys in the Caribbean or wherever, or South America, they're running people, and they'll come back and say, okay, thanks for the 5904 QRZ. I'm like, you had this time to tell this guy thanks for 5904 and you can't tell us who you are? So it's just bad operating. If you listen to a guy like AP5A with W2SC, they don't say their call every single time, because sometimes they do moderate it a little bit if there's a lot of guys calling. But you listen to Tom, he says his call almost every time. You never have to wonder who he is. He has a lot less dupes, which means he's spending a lot more time working new people that improve his score than not. So anyway, that's just a soapbox thing. Sorry. Okay, sometimes it's not a bad idea to answer guys with the phonetics they use. Some people like this because now the guy will hear coming back the same pattern that he said, and he'll know that you came back to him. Sometimes I will not do this. I will deliberately use standard phonetics back to the guy because I want confirmation that he didn't say, you know, radio xylophone, and that meant RX, not RZ. So, by the way, if you ever have a call with X in it, you want to mess with people's heads, go around the whole weekend using xylophone. The French, for some reason, will use xylophone as a phonetic for X, and it took me a long time to figure out what they were talking about. And in phone, as you saw in the sweepstakes exchange that I gave, go slow to go faster. The goal here is to help the other guy get stuff in his log, not how fast you can say stuff. And this is going to be true on CW too, but in my sweepstakes exchange that I gave there were some very definite pauses, like 149 Bravo, space, call sign, space, check-in section. If you run them all together, it's amazing. People will get behind, and there's something about that break where the call sign is that gets they lose track. And that's why you hear a lot of people go, what's your check-in section again? It's because you didn't give them enough space to process getting from the front half to the back half. That's kind of a unique thing to sweepstakes, but definitely can help you out. Whoops, got to push the right button. So let's talk about CW. Some of the same things are true. When I say be consistent, when you're running people on CW, the Pileup, if you have one, really likes it when you're consistent, when you're doing kind of the same thing over and over again. And since the computer's doing all the sending, it actually helps you a lot at being consistent, because it's like type in the call, hit insert, type in the exchange, hit plus, and move on to the next one. Sending speed. There are people who seem to feel like sending really fast is good, and it's cool to listen to, but at the same time, if the other guy has to ask you for a repeat, you've probably used up more time than you saved. So if you listen to me in a contest, it's a pretty big deal if I get to 36 words a minute. I don't spend that much time at 34, and I do a lot of operating at 32, because I want the other guy to get it on the first over, because it's way faster for me in the overall long run for him to get everything right the first time than it is for him to have to go through the process of asking me to repeat and then me repeating and then moving on. So I personally am not one of these big high-speed freaks. I focus all my attention on copying things right the first time from him. I do not want to ask for repeats if I can help it. Get everything right the first time. I once did a sweepstakes CW where I went up in the novice band, and I'm working guys at like 18 words a minute, which feels really slow, but on Sunday afternoon, if you can find people to talk to and you can get everything through in the first try, they all count the same. Just a little bit of a editorial on cut numbers. Cut numbers are when you send a T for 0 or an N for 9 or something like that. I think for RSTs, we all get it. 5NN, no problem. But all those other numbers for the rest of the thing, it takes a little longer to send the whole thing, but probably the only cut numbers I would ever really use might be a T for 0 and maybe an A for 1. But most of the time, I'll just have the computer send the whole thing. Why not? Help the guy on the other side get it right. When you use cut numbers, again, it's way cool. The Europeans love it. But it makes the guy on the other side have to go, okay, A-N-B-J. Let's see. That's 1-9-B. Did he mean a 6 or a 7? Is it J, a 1, or a 2? I can't remember. So now I'm brain locked here. So I have to ask the guy, can you send the number again? So if you send the whole number every time, think about it. Numbers are the easiest thing in the world to copy. They have a certain number of dots and a certain number of dashes and vice versa. And if you miss something, generally you go, okay, how long was the time that it took? Was that a dash that I missed or a dot that I missed? And then you know the number, right? So send the whole thing. It helps the other guy. And then there is no substitute for practice on any of this stuff, but especially for CW. Remember, our goal here is to get to the point where we're not thinking. Okay, so now, back to execution. We got to know, you have to know, based on your station, your experience, and your plan, know when to run and know when to search and pounce. And the thing is, search and pounce or tune around and find people. You do that whenever you can't run. So does anybody get the story here? run when you can, and if you can't, go essentially look for a new place to run again. And while you're doing that, work some other people at the same time. And what ham radio contesting didn't used to be this way. When we were happy to work 1,800 guys on a whole weekend, you had plenty of time to do everything. But if you look at contesting today, it's very much a rate game. How many people can you work? Most times the score is generated by big QSO totals. So you want to run, even if you're a small station, you want to try to find, be opportunistic, find a place where you can call CQ. And the reason for that is the way you win a contest is to work the most guys that the other guys don't work. I.e., work the most people who are not in the contest or not serious. That bottom group in our participant triangle. Those guys typically don't call CQ. They answer people. So why does everybody call CQ all the time and try to run when you can? Because you'll get some of those guys that you can't get any other way. So I realized I just made my life harder by getting another 200 people to call CQ all the time. But anyway, that's why everybody does it. And there's no magic formula. People are always asking, well, how do I know when to run or when to search and pounce? Well, I've already answered the question. So run when you can, and if you can't, you got to do something else. But remember that gray line thing where you had to make a decision. I've got to go find these multipliers. I've got to go be in a certain place. Or if I'm going to run well, I know I need a frequency, which means I need to be on this band a little early. There's all this kind of stuff that goes into the thinking. But in the end, it's about doing your planning and so on, and you'll have the try different stuff as you go along, and you'll eventually tune it up. Now, if you're going to call CQ and do running, if you're a mid-sized station, so we'll assume if you're K3LR, we know what frequency you're going to be on all weekend. We don't have to worry about that. But if you're, if you have a modest station, then it's about finding these opportunistic places. Maybe I don't want to be on the hot band. I want to be on a band on either side of it where it's not quite as busy. Maybe I want to be the first guy to get up there so that I have a little more space around me. My signal will stand out some. Doesn't matter where you are in the band. The most important thing is who's around you. And that's why I say be aware of your surroundings. When you hear a frequency and it sounds really clear, I'll usually try to spend at least a couple of seconds figuring out who my neighbors are. Are my neighbors people who are louder than me? Which might explain why this frequency is clear. But if I know they're going to be louder than me, then I probably should go somewhere else. But if I listen around and go, oh, okay, these are guys that are further away, or they're at the closing of the opening for them, they'll eventually go away, maybe that's a good spot. Same thing is true if you hear somebody come in. Pay attention. You'll hear these guys start, you're in there, you're a modest station, you're maybe not that loud. You'll hear the guys on each side just slowly start. The frequency will just kind of crater, as both sides move in on you. Be aware of that when it's happening and people quit calling you, you know that you're done. You're excused. You need to go find another spot. So get whole calls the first time and then know your rate goal. We talk about running all the time, but I've done the worldwide CW several times where I've started the contest calling people because it was faster than trying to run guys. So there are times where running people is not the fastest way to make QSOs. And so just got to have some, like in sweepstakes, I know if the rate's less than this CQing, I need to be doing something else, that kind of thing. Okay, if you're tuning around, you're going to be doing some calling of people. And as you roll into a pileup, it's all about opportunity cost. We've already talked about what it does to your score and how to make that decision. You've also got to, so that defines the worth of the target. You listen to the size of the pileup. Did this guy just show up and did packet just get put out, and I've got LPL and LR and all these other guys in there, and I might as well come back because there's at least 10 people are going to have to work him before anybody else does. And then also pay attention to propagation. Is it going away from me or is it going to be better? That kind of thing. But in the end, smart beats loud. After every CW contest, you hear these massive pileups on Sunday or whenever some African shows up or some rare South American or packet cluster thing is going crazy. And you take the transmit incremental tuning and you just bump it 100 or 200 cycles in one direction or the other. And the guy will come back to you right away because everybody else is piled up on the same place and you're sitting out here by yourself. That can save you half hour in the course of a contest just by calling people off frequency because you work the guy right away and you're done. NH2L in Guam or into, actually, what am I saying? N2NL, NH2T Anytime you call Dave, I'm always weak because I'm in New England. I'm far away from him. There's always people calling him, and they're always louder than me. But I will call him off by a little bit, and he will come back right away every time. It's just because the good operators will listen on the edges, and they will pick you up out there because they can get your whole call in the first try. So definitely, I think N1MM added a feature here recently where when you jump on a packet spot, it throws in a random offset. This is an attempt to just make it easier for this to happen without you having to do it manually. I always like to do it manually because I like to see if the guy is chasing people up or down a little bit. Now, if you're just a single radio station, the key here is how do I get more time? It's all about time, right? So I find a guy to work, he doesn't come back to me. I hit A equals B, so now he's loaded into my second VFO, and then I keep tuning. Maybe I find somebody else to work. Then I reverse back and see, oh, is he done yet? And if he is, I call him again. If I don't get through, okay, jump back to the other VFO, tune some more, find another guy to work. Keep coming back. This is really easy to just have 2 VFOs and tune your way up the band, especially if you're in a kind of search and destroy mission here where I want to find everything. And you can take all that dead time that you would have normally sat there, go listen to the guy, you know, give the exchange, and okay, thanks, and you know, go to the next one. You can be spending that time doing something productively. Takes a little more energy, but it's worth it. So that's why I wanted to mention it here. In the end, you need to make good QSOs. Errors reduce your score. We're going to talk about them in a minute. So the goal here is maximize your score by working as many people, as many multipliers, as many points as you can. But you want to make sure that you're actually working the people that you think you're working. In a contest like the Worldwide, where the exchange is very short, it's really easy to have 2 guys on the same frequency and both of them think they're rocking. And one of them probably is and one of them isn't. And one guy ends up with a lot of not-in logs, and he sends me the recording and says, look, I worked all these people, but unfortunately they weren't working him. The other thing is pay attention to the cluster spots. You cannot trust them. Very interesting for us when we're checking logs and we find that somebody worked a guy on a certain frequency. But we go look at the other logs and we realize that guy they think they worked, he moved 5 minutes ago to another frequency. We're pretty sure that guy's using packet, right? Because there's no way he could have worked a guy that wasn't there anymore by accident. Practice. I love this quote from Yogi Berra. There's no question. But you can practice radio contesting, and it's very simple. You get on any weekend and you find the contest that's going on and you work people. They will learn your call, you will learn their calls, you'll learn propagation, you'll learn what works, you'll learn what doesn't, you'll practice search and pounce, you'll practice running people. It's all about practice. Remember, it's all about getting that driving example. I want to get to where I'm not thinking anymore. And then sometimes it's just for fun. If you're working in the shack and there's a contest going on, put it on some guy who's doing pretty well and just listen to him. The good guys, it's just smooth, just really smooth. Listen to AP5A for a while. It's just like a machine. It's just happening. Listen to how, and the most important thing is listen to how they get people to follow instructions. Not a lot of words. They ask for what they want so that the guy will give them what they're missing. Missing a piece of the exchange, and missing a piece of the call, whatever it is. They're very good at getting people to just, without being rude or obnoxious or anything, just here's what I need this. And pay attention to how they do that and then compare that to how your operating normally is. Okay, so I mentioned errors before. Let's talk about accuracy. I got into an interesting debate with some people the other day. They're like, why don't we give bonus points for doing well? And I said, well, a bunch of arguments, and I said, in the end, my daughter goes to school, and when she comes home, they mark down from 100, not up from 100. So there's nothing wrong with the idea of penalties for errors. That's what we've all been used to in school. But the thing here, But the thing here is, different contests have different penalties. Some of them publish them, some of them don't. But you want to know what penalties are worth because they essentially define what the opportunity cost is for guessing. If I'm going to guess a call and it's going to cost me that QSO plus 3 more, Maybe I don't want to guess. Maybe I actually want to make sure I've really got the right one. Errors do happen. Everybody has errors. Golden logs are a rare thing, and it's a cool thing to have, but in the end, you're going to have errors. It's okay. In the CQWW and in the WPX, we send people log checking reports, which you can look at, and we tell you not only the mistakes you made, but we tell you all the mistakes that other people made when they worked you. And the reason we do that is so that you can try to learn, is there something maybe I'm saying my call unclearly, or I'm sending it unclearly, or what can I do to help the other guy get my information? That will probably help you go faster by helping him go faster. And then the last thing, even though we focus on errors because they are penalties, one thing that's really changing here recently, and we're trying to drive this certainly in the CQ contests, is do the contest, send it in. The goal here is not to see how good you are at post-contest log washing. In other words, figuring out, looking on QRZ or looking on the DX Summit and seeing who was really there and that kind of stuff. Copy the people that you work, put them in your log, send it in. That's what contesting, that's the game. The game is on the air, not afterwards. Okay, so one of the things you can do is improve your vocabulary. English has 180,000 words, which is kind of mind-boggling. But the average person uses 10 to 12,000. CQ Worldwide Sideband had 101,000 calls in it. Some of these are probably like some of those English words. They're maybe not real. But if we look at these, we see that out of those 101,000 calls, 56,000 appeared in only one log. This is what people often will call a unique. That means only one guy worked this. Now, a unique by itself isn't bad. It just, somebody may have gotten on the radio, worked you, and then went away, whatever, or they just wanted to see what the contest was. So there's nothing wrong with working uniques. But experience says 90% of these 56,000 are bad calls. In other words, there's usually a way we can match them up with somebody who was active. Even if they didn't send in a log, we can figure out that, gee, this guy worked. I'll put it this way. If you got on in the CQ Worldwide and worked 10 people, I can probably tell you who 8 of them are. After the fact. So just from all the cross-checking, we know who's actually real on the air and who is not. Here's the interesting part. 17,000 calls appeared in 20 or more logs. So that tells us this is somebody who's actually a contester, even if it's in the participant class. They got on the air and they worked some number of people. That's your target. You want to know as many of those guys as you can. So if you know 5 to 10,000 of these really common calls, then when you hear them, you're not having to think as much. Like, oh yeah, I know that guy. I know. So let's take a test here. So here's a group of calls that might come up in your log. These are from Worldwide Phone this last year. Which one of these are bad? Wait. So somebody raise their hand and tell me a call that's bad. Sandy. Okay, that's possible. So she suggested W0ASH was bad because it should be AIH perhaps. Yes? Right, so another one is HI3TIJ. Actually, the I and E, it turns out English is the only people who say I like I. All the rest of the languages say I like E. And so it's a very common mistake to get these flipped over. What's another bad call? Wait, what? Nobody likes this call? 3. TIJ we talked about. Papa 3-3 Whiskey is very active, multi-single, a bunch of Russian guys. Super crisp, super efficient, super fast, very easy for people to miss one of the letters in their call. And then you're correct. ASH could be a good call. This is I put this in here on purpose. I would hate to be that guy in a CW contest, but yes, it's probably W0AIH. And there are a lot of calls nowadays that the boundaries have kind of been taken off on how many numbers can be in a call sign now, especially in Europe. So you really have to pay attention to some of these, and just when a funny one comes in, if you don't think you have it right, ask them to repeat it. And the reason I put this one on here is this O, because it's very easy to think that should be YU150 Tango Charlie, and it's really OTC. I have no idea what that calls for, but it's been active a couple of times. Okay, so we know what we got a plan, we're executing. We got the last part now, which is we got to stay in the chair. Nothing else that we've talked about will help your score as much as BIC time. So if you don't sit in the chair, you're not, and oh, by the way, you do have to be working people when you're sitting there. Sleeping in the chair does not count as helping, but spend your time working people. And the more that's one of the interesting things about contests, and the reason there's no time limit in the CQ Worldwide, even though a lot of people ask for a shorter time limit category, is the goal is get on the air in the period, work as many people as you can, make as big a score as you can. It's your choice whether you do a little bit or a lot, but if you want to be higher in the listings, it's a good idea to spend a little bit more time. So you have a couple of choices here. If you're doing the whole contest, you know what the strategy is. I'm going to sit here until I fall over. But if you have a real life, I do not fall in this category, but if you have a personal life, then you have to decide, where am I going to do something? So when I do a part-time effort in a contest, I will try to pay attention that if I work different parts of the contest, so I get different bands, which people come to me and they go, wow, you only work 20 hours. How'd you work so many multipliers? Well, I didn't work the same 20 hours anyway, the same hours anytime. I may do some stuff the first day, and then I'll be on a different band or a different time of the day the second day or something like that. But that's just me, because I hate to lose. So it's like, even if I'm part-time, I'm still trying to figure out, how do I maximize my score in my 20 hours or 30 hours that I have? So you have to decide. It goes back to that goal. If you know you're not going to be competing, pick something. I love the online scoreboards because I can sit down anytime, pick a guy who's in front of me somewhere, and I'm going to chase him down. That's my contest for the next 30 minutes or whatever it is, or how much time I have. Now, if you're going to maximize BIC time, you got to deal with sleep deprivation in some form. There's a couple of things about sleep that, if you know these, you'll be far ahead. You cannot train for lack of sleep. It does you no good to sleep deprive yourself a bunch of times. Yes, you will know what it feels like, but it isn't going to make you any more efficient. And by the way, knowing what it feels like actually becomes pretty important. So you do learn as you go along, yeah, this feels really bad, but it isn't going to feel this bad forever. But you can't train for it. You can't store it up. But what you can do, well, I'll talk about that more later. But in the end, I copied this from some military manual somewhere, but under sleep deprivation, it's the highly practiced skills, the things that you've done over and over and over again, that deteriorate the most slowly, which is why you see the military and everything drilling so much. No thinking when you're sleep deprived. You want stuff to just happen. And that's why in contests, we're really lucky. We're doing the same thing over and over and over again. My wife is always laughing when the contest is over, or I'll come out to make a refrigerator run or something. She'll ask me a question. I cannot process this question, whatever it is. I have no idea, or I'll make some stupid, nonsensical answer or whatever. But I can go sit down and keep working, guys, because it doesn't require any thinking to work, guys. But it does require thinking to talk. So for preparation, the way you help yourself for sleep, you can't store sleep, but you can bank a little bit of it. The more rested you are coming into the event, the easier it is to ride through that one night or 2 nights that you need to. And one of the things that people will often do is they'll say, well, I've got all the station prep stuff and I'm really busy at work and so on. I'll stay up late Thursday night and then I'll sleep in Friday morning, it'll be great. Well, your body doesn't work that way. You will stay up late Thursday night, your body will wake up at the normal time, and now all you've done is started the contest with like 4 hours of sleep instead of what you need. So the trick is get all that stuff done the week before, the weekend before, and then really concentrate the week leading up to the contest to go to bed and try to get whatever 7 or 8 hours, whatever you can. The more the better. Because when you get to the contest weekend, if you're well rested, you just motor through the weekend. It is not nearly as painful as if you show up where you're already messed up, which is why a lot of the guys, the really serious guys, will try to get to the station as early as possible so they can rest. And if you can do it, taking a nap before the contest starts really helps a lot. Very hard to do if you're really hyped up, but it's worth it. And then during the contest, if you do sleep, and you know, pretty much have to unless you're one of the 5 guys who wants to do the whole 48 hours. Sleep in 90-minute intervals. And the reason for this is your sleep cycle, every 90 minutes you kind of come up. So when you go to sleep, it gets deeper and deeper, and then you come back up a little bit, and then you go deep again, and then you come up a little bit. And each time you come back up, you come up closer to the top. So that's why you often will kind of wake up at 6 hours or 8 hours or something after you went to sleep because of this sleep cycle. I've tried to set my alarm for 1 hour. I was like, I'm going to go sleep for an hour. I woke up. I talked to the guys on 2 meters who I told I would check in to make sure that I was awake again. They said I talked to them. I don't remember this. And then the next thing I know, I wake up 4 hours later, I'm in another room in the house. So waking up, trying to short 90 minutes will have you wake up and either be disoriented or sleep drunkenness or something like that. You go for 90 minutes, it's much easier to wake up, or 180 minutes. Usually when I sleep in a DX contest now, I sleep for 3 hours. And it makes a huge difference. So, back to goal. Motivation is about goal. I have a goal. I have somebody I'm going to beat. I always try to personalize it. So I'm going to try to beat K1AR no matter what. And so I am not going to fall asleep, because if I lose to him because I fell asleep, I'll be really mad. And this is what happened to me last year with K1, or 2 years ago with K1DG. I lost the worldwide by 18,000 points or something like that. So Doug has the USA record for single op all band, and it's because I'm not really in this contest. You know, I'm probably losing anyway. I'm going to go sleep for 3 hours. Well, if I'd operate another hour, I win. So you have to decide. Do I want to sleep or quit, or do I want to not leave anything in the bag? But if you are going to sleep, do it during the low rates rather than the high ones. That seems to go without saying, but you know, you'll power your way through the night and then you're falling asleep when the Europeans start coming in the morning, and that was a bad decision. Sleep when the rate's low, and then you'll be ready to go. Okay, last one. So to kind of pull all this back together, it's about time management. I have X amount of time. I need to accomplish a certain number of contacts. Every moment should go to making the next QSO or improving the score. You never know which contacts are going to make a difference, especially if there's penalties for making errors, so pay attention. And then probably the most important thing is everybody is experiencing the same conditions. I've seen so many people make this plan. Oh, the conditions are going to be great. I'm going to make this plan assuming we're going to have, it's going to be awesome. And about 12 hours in, they're looking at the plan and like, oh, wow, I'm way behind. I'm losing. This is terrible. I quit. No, everybody else, it sucks for everybody else too. It's okay. The guys who really are motivated will power through that, and they will win because all the weaker guys will have been called out. So eventually you just have to decide, okay, we're all in this together. If it's bad for me, it's bad for the other guys. Everybody's score is going to go down. My goal here is winning, not making a big score. Remember, no style points. Just place in the listings. That's what it's all about. So with that, I have no idea where we are on time, but you know, if you focus on these different things as you prepare your effort, I'm sure that your scores will go up, and you'll be a little higher in the listings than the guy that than your nemesis, whoever that may be. How much time do we have? Okay. Oh, great. There's cookies or questions. Great. Thanks a lot. So now I have to decide, okay, if I take any questions, you know, anyway. Questions? Yes. So the question was, in a pileup, how far off? In a phone pileup, not very far, unfortunately. But in CW, I don't know, 100 hertz or so is probably enough. You don't want to be so far that the guy didn't know you're calling him, but you want to be enough so that hearing you can tell. Somebody on the web did a study where they published different tones and how 2 tones different distances apart. It looks like you need about 40 hertz for somebody to actually be able to tell that there's 2 signals there. So that's why 100 usually, 100 hertz, 0.1 on the incremental tuning. That's what I go for. Yes, in the very back. Yes. So the concept, so the question was, I mentioned an online scoreboard. Somebody's going to help me with the URL here, but okay, cqcontest.ru. It's run by a Russian guy, and the different contest softwares, like I know N1MM and a couple of the other ones, they have a way that you can set them up so that they will post your that in a concept with a long exchange like sweepstakes, if somebody asks you for your power or your precedence, whatever it is, if somebody asks for your precedence, just send that. Don't need to send everything again. I think what we see, though, sometimes in fairness is some people don't copy what the request is, and so they just kind of give you everything again so that they don't have to back and forth. Yes? Okay. Okay. Yep. Okay. This is a great question. So the question is about post-contest log corrections, and we've been very clear that we don't want you going back and comparing with your friends or looking at databases online or whatever to try to figure out calls that are maybe incorrect. But the question was, what if I've taken notes as I've gone along because I don't have the skills or the time or whatever to edit my log in real time? And the answer is, you can do those kinds of corrections if you've taken notes. At least in the case of the CQ Worldwide rules, what they say is no use of databases, friends, websites. I don't know what all we said. We listed some things and said, can't use any of those. We didn't say anything about you using your own brain in your, of what you did in the contest. Part of the reason we do it this way is I don't really want you to send in a log filled with lots of junk. So in other words, it's okay to read through your log and say, okay, based on my brain and my knowledge and whatever I might have written down as I was going along, those things I can correct. But what we don't want you to do is make it bigger than that. And so anyway, I'm speaking just for the Worldwide. I can't speak for any of the other contests. Yes? So the question here is about strategy, and I have to say I'm actually not a very good planner because after a while you've done the contest enough times, you just sit down and you do it and figure it out as you go. But I think the key in your planning and your analysis is just to try to get an understanding of the mechanics. I remember I mentioned the patterns of when things happen, when big rates typically happen, where multipliers come from, the trade-off value of rate versus multipliers at different times in the contest. So, and then I think there's a lot of good propagation forecasting sites now that will show you what areas of the world you can reach at any given time for a given solar flux. Pay attention to those. And I think in the beginning when you're starting out, it's not a bad idea to make some kind of matrix cheat sheet that says, be on this, in this hour I want to check these bands or look for this kind of thing. Because that will, again, when you're in the heat of battle, it's just a reminder, oh yeah, I need to go look for this. But it's not about how long or how much you prepare in advance, just that you put some thought and do some homework. Okay, I think we're done with that. The cookies are calling. Sandy, I'll answer you later. Thank you all very much for your time.